Welcome to the Plant-Free MD podcast with Dr. AnthonyChaffee, where we discuss diet and nutrition and how this affects health and chronic disease, and show you how you can use this to optimize your health and happiness, both mentally and physically. Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right. Thanks, guys. Hello, everyone. That's Dr. AnthonyChaffee. I'm here today with a very special guest, someone I met at KetoCon. I've seen before on things such as Fat, a documentary, and other sorts of venues, and like his podcast, Protect Your Nest. Dr. Tony Hampton, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast. It's really nice to meet you.
Oh man, I'm happy we had a chance to connect. Definitely enjoyed meeting you at KetoCon. My wife said, you got to go over there and meet Dr. Chaffee and Dr. Sean Baker. It was nice to just get in front of people. I hadn't been to a conference in person in a while, other than Low Carb USA. So it was nice to meet you guys in person, and let's have a conversation, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great to meet you as well. That was one of the things I thought about KetoCon was that, you know, this is something I hadn't really done before as well. And I've spoken to a few people online, but, you know, obviously I hadn't met them in person. So it was really great to meet everyone and people such as yourself. So that was great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for people that haven't met you before, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm in Chicago area, family doctor. I have board certification in obesity medicine, and thankfully I'll be finishing my nutrition and functional medicine training in a few weeks after this recording. And why I love that is it really teaches you about the root cause of why we get sick. And as a physician, most of my life has been, let's diagnose what's wrong, let's treat it with medicine, surgeries, or procedures. But what I found, and many people in the metabolic health space have found, that people weren't healing. And it was a combination of my wife being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, not really being interested in, becoming, just getting all these medicines, although she had to take insulin. But because we've changed our approach and we've learned that lifestyle is the key, the need for insulin has been greatly reduced and for her. And just as importantly, I took my learnings, when I wrote my first book, Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes, I wrote that as a tool for my patients who I just never felt I had enough time to teach, right? So I said, let me give them a tool to help them and give them something tangible. So that was to help them. So many patients suffer from diabetes. And I felt like the YouTube and a podcast would be helpful as well, just to kind of give people a way to hear the messages, because you're trying to teach a ton in like 15 minutes, right? So how do you do that? Well, you create resources, and even the LinkTree that I have, and I'll share that with you. My LinkTree is a way for people to, how to do low carb. Just click on the video and watch it. What's, my patient handout, how do you do low carb from that perspective? And I think that's a nice starting point for people who might ultimately end on a keto diet or carnivore diet. So it's been like a gift when you can use lifestyle to help people. And I just think it's the only way to practice medicine. We were trained to heal people, I thought. So let's use this knowledge to do that. So again, that's kind of how I got started. And I'm in a large health system, Advocate Aurora, in Illinois, Wisconsin. It may end up expanding. We may merge with a health system called Atrium. So we may be in, Georgia, North and South Carolina, and Alabama soon. So it's a large health system. And my thinking is, let's take this healing message to a large health system, which will then influence other health systems. If we can show people we can reduce the cost of care by healing people, it's much cheaper to treat, or to just maintain a person healthy as opposed to treating their diabetes. So let's reverse diabetes. That's my thinking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a very good business model as well that people don't think about. But there've been a lot of companies that have improved not only the health of their employees but their bottom line by encouraging exercise programs, running to work, cycling to work. Like Nike just pays you more if you'll just run to work or cycle to work, and you can take longer lunch breaks if you go to the gym and things like that. So it's incentivizing them, and they end up, costing the company less in their medical insurance. So, this is something that actually is fiscally beneficial to companies and should really think about. So I think that's a very good argument to make. So that's so well done with that. Speaking of sports, you have a U.S. Open tennis hat on. Is that your sport of choice? Do you play yourself or just?
Yeah, well, I never was in the U.S. Open, unfortunately.
Yeah.
but yeah, that's my sport of choice. I literally, I think I was around 10 or 11 or so, and we moved to an apartment with my mom. I have an older brother. It's just us three. And literally, you walk outside the door and you see a tennis court, right?
Yes.
So the tennis court is meaningful for many reasons, but the most important, I think, is that it gave me a vision. When you're living on the west side of Chicago, where you don't necessarily see doctors and lawyers in your neighborhood, it was an opportunity for me to not just play a sport that exposed me to others who were not necessarily African American, as an example, but literally, it was a suburb called Oak Park, Illinois, where a lot of my tennis friends actually live. So it actually forced me to kind of go into their neighborhoods, and they may live in a large house, with the picket fence, and it was a little different than what I was accustomed to. So what tennis did for me is it kind of took me out of the hood in a way and brought me to things that I saw my friends have. And it made me want to work hard to have those things. So tennis is actually not just something you do because I played for my high school and for the Park District and did those types of things, but it also kind of gave me a different perspective. And sometimes it's really those life experiences that help you become who you are, gives you that confidence, lets you know that, oh, if my friend can do this, I can do this. And so, and I was really just jealous of you being an athlete. That's really what it was. So I wanted to let the world know Dr. Hampton has some athleticism as well. But I love tennis. I don't play as often as I would like. I'm actually going to start to integrate that back into my life because the kids are finishing up their education. My youngest is in graduate school at WashU in St. Louis. So as we try to have, get back to a married couple doing things together, tennis will be back on the to-do list. So love the sport and happy to get that back into my life. Yeah.
Well, it's cool that your son's at WashU. You actually have a buddy of mine who's doing his fellowship in pediatric neurosurgery there. So, yeah. That's really
it's a
cool.
great school, man. It's one of the most beautiful campuses you'll ever go to.
Oh, really?
And if you go there, there's very few places that will impress you. Washington University in St. Louis it's a place where the parents are like, can we live here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a nice spot.
Nice. Yeah. I was going to say as well, sports are, I think they're such a good teacher of life lessons. I think they're very, very beneficial for it certainly taught me a lot of things. It teaches you, hard work, discipline. You need to listen to coaches. You need to work with other people, and you need to, set goals, and you need to try to work really hard to hit them. Say, okay, how am I going to get here? That's my goal. How do I get there? And you map these things out, and those same life lessons can be applied for the rest of your life and everything that you do. I remember there was, when I was in finishing up medical school, I came across a paper. I forget where the institution was, but it was a residency director at a top program in the US. And they published this study that actually showed that a better indicator of how well a resident is going to do in the residency was not the USMLEs or their grades or what school they came from, but if they were successful in sports previously, because, and I think that it's almost certainly to do with that aspect. You're going to work hard, you're going to push yourself. to try to excel and hit goals. And so, if you were, they found that people that were very successful in sports and went to medical school and this, they probably applied themselves well, and then knew how to work with the team, knew how to be coached, knew how to be involved in a complex structure, working towards a very high end goal that demanded perfection in a lot of ways. So I think that's I think that brings a lot to people's lives. Yeah. And so how you've shown up in obviously a lot of different places. Like, I mentioned Fat documentary with Vinny Tortorich, which I thought was great. I thought that really, blew the case open on the fact that we've been, lied to and misled on the whole fat being bad and plants being good. When did you come to this realization when you found that plants may not be that good for you, and that reducing them and actually going towards a meat-based diet has actually provided benefit to people's health?
I'll start by saying that my previous life was one where I had a more of a vegetarian vegan perspective. So about 10 years ago, I've been, low carb, keto, on the verge of carnivore for basically, 10 years. But before that, I was plant-based. When I wrote Fix Your Diet, Fix Your Diabetes, that book was it was going to be a plant-based book because that's what I was doing. But the research didn't justify it. I just started looking at the research, rather it's the Shy study, which compared, I think, Ornish kind of diets, the plant-based to Mediterranean and low carb, and the Mediterranean low carb did the best, and the low carb did the best of all. So I started looking at these studies. I'm like, why is the Atkins diet doing better than the low fat diet? It didn't make sense to my logic. So I had to honor the research, and I shifted. So part of this understanding that plants are not necessarily the most ideal nutrient or source of food was from my research, from my book, and trying to help my patients. When I started my nutrition and functional medicine training, which, interesting enough, a lot of the folk who teach us are more plant-based in this training, which I think is one of the things with nutritional science that's kind of still harming us, is that the next generation of nutrition professionals are still being taught this same way of thinking, that plants are best. But so I learned things in that setting. And when we had you on my podcast, the Protecting Your Nest podcast, we talked about the fact that, plants have, you said that plants are trying to kill you, right? So I asked you that question, and what we talked about were the anti-nutrients, because you have things in your plants that you don't have in the animals. The animals, as you know, they can defend themselves. The plants can't. So you have phytates and oxalates and lectins and things like that are in the plants. So I learned in my training, ironically, from folk who are actually promoting plants, they would argue that you need plants, you need to be challenged. So they believe in this hormesis kind of methodology, where if you're challenged a little bit, it makes you stronger. Just like when you lift weights, you got to challenge the muscles. The problem is if an oxalate is in something like spinach or something, it's gonna make the absorption of the calcium less than optimal, right? So you're eating all this spinach, kale, and all of these so-called good things, they have oxalates, and you can't get the calcium out of it. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. And then you have things like tannins, which are in certain types of things like, tea wine and things like that may inhibit protein absorption. So I learned these principles in my nutrition and functional medicine training. And I learned that if I have these phytates, for example, and they're going to inhibit my mineral absorptions in certain, because they're in grains and nuts and seeds, then what am I doing here? Like, what am I doing? So I'm eating these things for nutrition, yet the plants are saying, I'm not having that. You're not going to get the nutrition you think you should be getting out of it. So it's really conundrum. And so as I understood that, and then it started to make sense. I said, why is it that when I eat Brussels sprouts, my stomach bothers me? Why do I get gassy? Why do I not feel good? Why when I eat a steak, I feel nothing? I just feel great. And so other than just being full from it, I just had to listen to my body combined with listening to the science. And when I started listening to the science, I was like, okay, this is making sense. And so I had to honor the science and honor my body. And that's when I started to say, I need to eat more animals and less of these plants. And now I'm at a point where, like last night, I just had a ribeye. I had nothing else. We're still in a home where we still have vegetables that are being served, maybe one vegetable. But most days I'm kind of pushing towards just the animal because that's when I feel my best. I've never had a day when I've eaten a steak or chicken or fish in isolation and felt suboptimal ever. I can give you tons of examples when I've eaten plants and felt that way. Even when it's a whole foods diet, that's the crazy thing. So I listened to my body, I listened to the research, and that's how I ended up where I'm at now.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, and that's really good too, that you were open-minded enough after, a decade of being plant-based to, to be doing your own research, writing this book and going like, oh, what the hell is this? Because I mean, that's it, it's like these things have defense chemicals, and the idea of hormesis I've thought was a bit strange. I mean, it could be true, but at what dose? What evidence do we have? And we're not talking about one chemical being hormetic. Maybe that one chemical has a hormetic effect on our body at that exact dose that you get one leaf, and that's your hormetic dose. But what about 500 leaves or 50 leaves? And what about all the other things? Because there's 200,000 other chemicals in most of these plants as well. And so maybe one thing is hormetic. Are the others? And are they hormetic at that exact same dose that they come in that leaf? So I think that's, that's, maybe, like not, I don't think you're going to be able to make that strong of an argument for the hormesis side of things. And like you say, if this is stopping your body from absorbing nutrients, where's the hormetic advantage there? I think there's, yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Like I said, when you compare it to building muscle, yeah, but when you're lifting weights and building muscle, you're not inhibiting something that's also beneficial. It doesn't make sense. True. So yeah. I go with, I'm with that MBA I have, I'm looking for a return on investment, man. So yeah. I'm looking for, I don't want to waste anything. So I think that's a better way to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So you have your YouTube channel and you sort of go by the terminology like a metabolic health doctor. So, what is that exactly? Why is focusing on metabolic health so important to you? Obviously, your book was based on metabolic health. Why is that your focus?
Yeah, well, it goes back to return on investment. I realized that what is making us sick, and so if it starts with diet. We're eating in this, certainly in the United States, I think the recent, we always quoted 12% are metabolically healthy, meaning 88% are not. Well, Tufts just came out with the new study, and the new study says, well, only 7% are metabolically healthy. Yes.
Yeah.
So, right. And we should have a link to that study in the show notes. So if anybody watching or listening, just search it, or we'll have it in the show notes. But I'm going to tell you something. That means that 93% of the people you know and love are not metabolically healthy. Well, what does that mean? Well, by definition, we talk about your waist being greater than 40 inches for men, 35 for women. We talk about your blood pressure not being in a normal range. So if it's over 130, over 85, we're talking about your blood sugar being too high. If your fasting sugar is greater than 100, we're talking about your triglycerides being greater than 150. We're talking about your HDL being less than 140, which is the so-called good cholesterol. So what I've learned is, well, if hyperinsulinemia from too much starch and sugar is leading to metabolic syndrome, and metabolic syndrome is the foundation of heart disease and stroke. And as you mentioned in the podcast, previously, when we did the Protecting Your Nest, you said, well, they call it diabetes type 3, dementia type 3 diabetes. So if dementia is a metabolic problem, and the Warburg effect, where, and I've heard you talk about that as well. So if we're saying, I'm cancer and I love glucose. I love glucose. Well, how about if we don't give it access to all of this glucose, or at least give it glucose, gluconeogenesis via your pancreas using amino acids and fats. Let's do that as a source where we're minimizing the exposure so our cancer won't have a thriving environment to grow. I think that, so for me, if 70 to 80% of all chronic conditions are related to metabolic syndrome, it would be malpractice for a doctor to not focus on the thing that causes most of the chronic illnesses that we treat every single day. So for me, that's why I decided, you know what, let me focus on this language. My wife, when I first told her I wanted to say, I want to call myself metabolic health doctor, she said, nobody knows what that is. I said, that's the point. Nobody knows what that is. And my patients may not know, but they will know by the time we finish screaming from the rooftops. They will know what metabolic disease is. They will know about the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners. They will know that carnivore is a reasonable option to help heal, and keto and low carb. And we're going to say it that way. And think about it. I'll be speaking at the society. I mean, at the metabolic symposium that's sponsored by the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, Low Carb USA. And they never called it the Metabolic Health Symposium until this year. Why did they do that? Because they understood that there's many ways to get to metabolic health, and we need to focus on this terminology because this is actually what people need to learn about and change how they approach their health by understanding that the only way to treat it is not with metformin, is with lifestyle. There's no drug that's going to fix metabolic syndrome other than lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, unfortunately now in medicine, we're really focused on disease management as opposed to, disease prevention or curing people. Like what happened to curing diseases? That's just something that we've just sort of given up on. It's like, oh, that's not curable. Just manage it. Ulcerative colitis or Crohn's or diabetes, you have to just take these medicines, but they will never go away. That you have this disease. Okay. Will you always have pneumonia? No, that's a disease. That's a communicable disease, and you can get over that disease. So that's why I think that these sorts of metabolic issues and illnesses that we call diseases, I think, are misnamed because you should be able to cure a disease. And so I think that definitely we need a lot more doctors taking this approach, and hopefully, being a director of a major, medical facility will start to influence other people. I was just going to ask you quickly on that. Has your influence in what you're doing, is that branched out to the doctors and the providers that work for you?
Yeah. I am fortunate to be in a large health system where our motto is we help people live well. We're also a population. We're probably in a top 10 size-wise for population health. So population health, where you are being asked to, here's resources to take care of the population. You need to take care of the population. What that forces you to do is if you do a really good job, there will be more resources to have programs. So to help people. So the short answer to your question is yes. It still takes time because this language, metabolic health and things like that, are not mainstream. So we're currently working on a transformational project to transform care in diabetes. There's about 4 parts of that. And I'm helping to lead the part with another colleague from Wisconsin, where we focus on how we interact with patients for diabetes care. And in that model, I will, along with my colleagues, suggest things that focus on lifestyle. Kind of like what Virta Health does. They use a dietary approach. I may be reaching out to them to hear what they're doing. And they've done the research. So we'll take the research. That's why I think Virta Health is so important, because when you're talking to a large health system, they need to know that there's some research that supports this way of thinking. But in the past, I helped lead our healthy living program, which, in fact, I did a grand rounds with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners, where I went into more detail. So for those who are not familiar with the society, definitely consider joining, because you have to be a member to get the grand rounds. And so the healthy living program, getting in front of people, talking about lifestyle, helping them, showing them how to cook food, partnering with the Chicago Food Depository to give them some food. And then what do you do with the cauliflower once you get it? That's one thing I help lead. We have a diabetes prevention program, which is something that we have throughout the country. However, our version kind of does carb restriction as opposed to the standard guidelines that people follow. A COPD program using the same methodologies in the diabetes prevention program, where we help people with COPD. What does COPD have to do with, your diet? Everything, inflammation and things like that. So you're not having the flares, and also teaching people how to use their inhaler and referring them to pulmonary rehab. You'd be shocked how many clinicians never refer their patients to pulmonary rehab. So we make sure that they get those resources, make sure they do their spirometry so we know how their lungs are functioning. And then we have a food pharmacy. We spell it with an F instead of a P, where we actually have people come to the hospital. But before they get the food, in partnership with the Chicago Food Depository, they have to hear us show them, here's how you prepare this food. They won't see potatoes and rice in their packet. They will see non-starchy vegetables and things like that. And if they have canned items, there'll be non-starchy things as well. So those are the types of things that we're doing. We have a new weight management program that has been pushed out to our teams, but then we're going to push it out to our patients, where we are allowing people to have choice. So if they want to do low carb, carnivore, or low fat, that's up to them. But we coach them, because one of the number one success principle, in my opinion, other than the knowledge, they need support, because it's hard to change what you've been doing for years. So it's about giving people the tools to be successful, connecting them with information that makes sense, and then moving your entire health system towards that model. So, because no matter how much we yell and scream on podcasts, YouTube, if we're going to make a real impact, we have to get the insurers and the health systems to learn these approaches. And if we do that, we have the opportunity to transform how we deliver care in the United States and beyond. And because the United States is such a hub of what other countries do, if we get this right, it will affect it'll affect the entire world. And I might as well say infect. We want to infect them with the knowledge that metabolic health is the way to go.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, we do have a lot of influence in that regard. I mean, even when the U.S. stopped, said that, cholesterol causes heart disease, stop eating fat, the rest of the countries around the world did take notice and start adopting those guidelines. So hopefully that will absolutely, I hope that is the case, that we can, first of all, change our society and our approach to nutrition and medicine, and then the rest of the world will take that on as well. I think it's also great that you guys are focusing on food in the hospital setting as well, because I cannot tell you how frustrated I get. I'm sure you got frustrated as well, thinking back, that all the patients I see when they're eating their meals at the hospital, it's just all sugary carbs. Like, that's it. There's almost never meat. There's nearly no fat, and certainly no animal fat. There's only a bit of margarine or something like that, and then a bunch of jams and jellies and juices and fruit cups and things like that. And I get so upset seeing that. And we had emails from the hospital saying, "Oh, these are our nutritional guidelines. These are the green things. You can eat as much of those as you want, and this and this and this." And red was like meat and fat and this, that, and the other. You should almost never eat those things. And of course, I couldn't keep my mouth shut, so I emailed them back. I was like, "This is all wrong. Here's why." And I had there's a bunch of different points, a bunch of different links, and I got back like, "Oh yeah, I forwarded this on to so and so, and they'll be in touch." Still waiting for that little gem for them to come back to me. It's been about a year now that I sent that on. But yeah, it's so that's great that you've actually been able to make those inroads on hospital food, because hospital food is wretched. And it's like, these are the sickest people, and you're giving them crap, like high octane crap. And it's and it's like, it's stuff that when I was a kid, my parents would not let in the house. They're like, no, it's too much sugar. Absolutely not. And we're giving this to sick people with cancer and heart disease, it's appalling to me.
Yeah, I just had a tweet. My most recent tweet on Twitter was an image that I found of French toast. I had a patient who came in who had broken a limb. She was out of town. She went into the hospital, had broken a limb. She was diabetic. I think she was just taking metformin. And they offered her French toast every day on top of other starchy foods. Of course, because of that, they have to put her on insulin while she's in the hospital. So this is a person who was never on insulin, but because of the food that they're feeding her, she's on insulin. Of course, we immediately fixed that. Even when she pushed back and said, my doctor told me I shouldn't be eating this, they said, the nurse replied, the dietitian, whoever she spoke to, you need carbs to heal. And I thought that was an interesting statement. So, and even if you did, even if you need a little glucose to heal, your body will convert the protein and fat into glucose on demand and not give you excesses of it. So we have so much to learn. And it shouldn't take the patient to tell the professional who was trained that that's a ridiculous statement. So we have some work to do in terms of being able to teach. And again, that goes back to what I said. If we can get health systems to wake up and insurers to wake up and the people who treat nutrition to wake up, then we'll have a path for us to all heal. And we should not get sicker because we went to the hospital.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So in that vein, so what do you eat? What does a metabolic health doctor eat? What's your diet these days?
Well, I think even when I was vegetarian over 10 years ago for about 8 years, I definitely believe in whole food. So although I don't eat that way anymore, I try to be whole food. So, by the way, I was in Beyond Impossible. So Beyond Impossible by Vinny focuses on the Beyond Meat and Impossible Burgers now. So back then I was missing meat so much that I would consume those types of foods. But then I later learned that for example, in the Impossible Burger, they have leg hemoglobin in it. And the studies were just, they weren't great for the mice, first of all, to add this to the diet. And then they didn't really have human studies. So I just feel like people need to eat real food because real food is the path to healing in general. If you're doing it in a plant-based diet, you need to understand there's going to be some deficiencies that you need to make up for. I just chose to eat in a way where I don't have to have deficiencies. I tell my patients, you can either be a lion or you can be an ape. It's up to you. Now, if you're an ape, you're probably going to have to eat a ton of plants all day long, have a specific type of digestive system. You're probably going to have a round belly, and you're probably going to have to poop a lot because of all that fiber, right? Yeah. I don't have time for all that pooping. I don't have time to eat all day, right? Just to get the sufficient nutrients. Now, and then the other part of it is this idea of being a lion. And lions eat once or twice a week, and they get all the nutrients they need from the protein and fat in the animals that they consume. That's just a better model for me. And so for me, I'm at a point now where I don't eat breakfast. I fast in the morning. I think intermittent fasting is not required, but I just don't get hungry and I just don't eat breakfast. I was a coffee drinker in the past. I rarely drink coffee now. I started my journey because I had an irritable bowel problem. So coffee does cause a little irritation for some people. And so I said, well, why am I drinking coffee if it can harm my stomach? So what I found is that if I get enough sleep, I'm fine. So I just get enough sleep. And for me, that equals 6.5 to 7 hours per night. For lunch, I'm pretty much a carnivore, 100%. So I'll eat a half a chicken. I'll eat ribeye. I'll eat some, ribs, no barbecue sauce, of course, things like that. And for dinner, I tend to eat some type of animal, and I may or may not have a vegetable with it. I'm still in a home where we're kind of more keto, but I'm moving towards carnivore because my stomach is happier when I eat that way. So I have to be very specific. Like if I eat green beans, no problem. If I eat Brussels sprouts, big problem. And so I have to kind of find it. But at the end of the day, what tastes better, the green beans or the steak? It's the steak. So for me, I'm moving towards that. I may even do one of the Black Carnivores challenges where you do a carnivore challenge. I may do something like that and see how I do. But right now, that's pretty much where I'm moving. So metabolically health doc, I drink water. I may do tea, but it's pretty much just water. I keep it simple because this is not very complicated. And I'm busy. I don't really have time to be thinking about food. So for me, I feel phenomenal when I eat that way.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that, and especially the concept of keeping it simple, because there's so many complexities. Oh, you can do this at this time, but then half an hour before you need to do this, and then only half an hour. It's like, oh my God, like who is going to follow this? I think that that's very good for people trying to sell a program, and like this program will work, but it is really hard for people to follow. And I think that anything that's overly complex is almost certainly not to be what we experience in nature, because
right.
Who is telling the antelope how to do all that? Like they just have to do it. It has to be natural, it has to be instinctual. And so if you can eat instinctually, you can sort of fluff around with that if you want. Maybe if you're going for like a bodybuilding competition or whatever, and you want X body fat percentage or whatever, and you don't naturally go to X body fat percentage, and maybe you have to do something a little differently. But for normal daily eating for optimal health, it should be more or less intuitive. It should just make sense. You should be able to listen to your body's experience and sensations. Like you shouldn't feel hungry if you're full. You shouldn't feel hungry if you just eaten a big meal with 3,000 more calories than you need for that day. So something's off there, I think.
I agree.
Yeah, so I like that. I'll keep it simple. Also, the bowel motions. I had a buddy of mine I played rugby with, and he was commenting on that, and he's just like, we were on a rugby trip, and I didn't go to like the bathroom like the whole time. He was just like, when do you go to the bathroom? When do you go number two? And I was just like, I haven't. I go like once a week, And he's just like, how is that possible? You're supposed to go more, like the more the better. Like I go to the bathroom 6 times a day. I'm like, how is that? How do you have time to do anything else besides that? I mean, it's just like, you just be like worn raw with like, just, with that experience. It sounded just awful to me. And I was just so
that was me. That was me. And the problem is I could see 20 to 30 people a day. When do you have time to go to the bathroom? So you're between patients, the bathroom, everybody's fighting to get into the same bathroom. There's only, so it's just a ridiculous model. And yeah, if you're eating plants, you have to go. But if you're eating animals, you're going to pretty much absorb all of those nutrients. So there's not a lot of waste necessary. The funny thing is that people will say, I don't like to eat animals because, your body doesn't digest it well. I'm like, actually, it's the opposite.
Yeah.
Your body digests it perfectly. If you put a steak in stomach acid, it'll just disappear. So it's just a misunderstanding about how the body works.
Well, that's true, isn't it? Like these things just get repeated so often that people just they say it's like, oh well, everyone knows that. Okay, well, what was it based on? Where was the study? Where's the science behind it? And that's something that I've noticed as well, just in medicine in general, is that there's a lot of these things that just get repeated. Like like eating a lot of protein is bad for your kidneys. No, it's not. Super good for your kidneys. Yeah,
that's right.
Exactly. Yeah. And, but it was a best guess at the time, and they had reasons for that. But then when they did the studies, they found the opposite. They found that actually more protein improved kidney function. And but I still have, I still, hear like nephrologists, talking to their renal patients saying, you got to go plant-based, you got to get all this protein out of your system. And it's just like, dude, this is this is not even my specialty. Like, how do you not know this? Like, you should know this. It's not new. Like, it's been around for a long time, but they don't,
Well, all I can say is, if you're a patient who has borderline kidney function, I have, even during my days when I promoted more of a vegetarian diet, nobody's kidney function got better. Now, part of that is because you can't get a lot of people to do it, the diet, but for those who did, I didn't see reversal. When I started to promote a low carb keto or carnivore diet, creatinines and microalbumin's improving became the norm. And the only time it didn't improve is if they didn't do the diet. Now, of course, there's a point if it's a severe kidney disease where you have to use more caution. But in my clinical practice, anecdotally, it's been nothing but success stories. And they are regularly told by their specialists that there's no way you can improve kidney function. The disappointment, though, is that after they see me, I help them, they improve their kidney function, you still don't see the needle being moved with the specialist. They still act like they didn't see it just happen. You just saw their creatinine go from 3.5 to 1.5, and you're still not impressed. It's like, at what point, and that's the part I don't understand still. Why would my colleagues see this remarkable change and then not want to incorporate that into their area of expertise, which is to help the kidneys? It's perplexing.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Well, but that's the thing too. It's a shame because you came from a plant-based model, but then you started seeing things in front of you going like, this doesn't really make sense. And so you sound like you were an empiricist before you were a vegetarian. And unfortunately, it sounds like these guys are just, this is what I learned, so this is what it is. But it was a famous line that many medical schools, sort of take a version of. It was like a professor at Harvard, I think like in the 1930s or something like that. And he said that, 10 years after you graduate medical school, half of what you learned will turn out to have been false, but you won't know, but no one can tell you which half that will be.
That's
right. You have to figure it out. You have to stay current. And unfortunately, they didn't take that to heart. I remember hearing that in sort of the first couple of months at medical school, and it always stuck with me. And I think that probably helped that. But I've certainly seen a lot of these things. And specifically with the reversal of diseases, I have I've seen on just the different carnivore groups when I was first starting out with this, a lot of people with kidney failure, and they were talking about, does anyone else have kidney failure? Does anyone have this? Does this help? And a lot of people spoke up. These were my experiences. There was one lady who went carnivore and she was on dialysis. She had end-stage renal disease, and she went on carnivore she was on it for 9 months. And after 9 months, she came off dialysis, and she did end up not needing a kidney transplant, which is nuts. And, and like her doctor saying, you're going to die. First of all, I didn't really buy that in the first place. She already had non-functioning kidneys. So like, it's not going to get any worse. Like she already needed dialysis.
Right.
She already needed a transplant. It's like, you're going to get worse than that. Like, no, it's already, damage is done, but it actually reversed and she came off of it, which I thought was amazing. I relayed that to a friend of mine who, he was like 35 and his, kidneys were shutting down, and I think he had something like 19% kidney function or somewhere around there. And he was very worried because he thought, like, I have a 4-year-old daughter. I'm not going to live to see her graduate high school. And I just started telling him about the stuff that I was doing with carnivore and the things I found, that like the studies I found showing that actually proteins are really good for your kidneys, and obviously oxalates and other sorts of things are really bad for your kidneys. So it was like, these things in plants, we know that they cause harm. Protein and meat, we know benefit. So, it's worth a try. And he's like, you know what, screw it. It's worth a try. His doctor was really upset at him. He's like, no, you have to take these drugs and you have to eat a plant-based. You have to get rid of if you're eating meat, you're going to die. Your kidneys are going to go to hell. And he just said, look, I listened to your advice and it's only gotten me worse. So I'm just going to try this other thing. Within 3 months, he was back up to 80% kidney function, And so, yes, it's anecdotal, but it still happened,
Well, that's the whole point. I just said, wow.
Yeah.
Even after seeing this happen over and over again in my practice, I'm still like amazed at when I hear other clinicians tell their healing story. People, we're just providing hope for people. And there is no reason why you would continue doing the same thing over and over again. If it's giving you bad results, why not then take a chance on something that makes, that first of all, we have the evidence for. I think Dr. Unwin in the UK, I saw one of his recent studies, Dr. David Unwin, who makes the infographics with the sugar cubes and compares that to how much is in different foods. And not only were people improving their kidney function, but they were also compliant with the diet. but they also were being coached. Dr. Jen Unwin, who's in behavioral health, they understand you have to support and coach people. So we have the evidence to show that this works, but people have on blinders, right? It's almost like they don't want to see what's in front of them. But why would they not be skeptic? Why would they not question conventional thinking? Why would they not be dissatisfied with the results they're getting? So all we're screaming from the rooftops is, let's not be comfortable with our current state, and we need to be comfortable being uncomfortable with the old belief systems that have gotten us nowhere. So all we're doing is providing options for people, and I will never go back to the old way of thinking where I was a manager of disease. We went into healthcare to heal people, and if we have a path to heal them, as Hippocrates taught us, let food be thy medicine, why wouldn't we do that? Let's go back to that old way of thinking. So I'm really excited that we're just getting started. I mean, 10, 15 years ago, this wasn't even out there too much except for a few areas. And now we're actually able to help people restore hope. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And just hopefully more people, come on board. And I've certainly spoken to a lot of doctors that obviously this flies in the face of everything that we learned in medical school and before, just growing up, and they as well. But more people, I think, are listening. And I think that being influenced by yourself and just real life, like, this is the way I live and this is how I'm helping patients, people will take interest and take notice. Hopefully others will as well. Unfortunately, you get other ones that, like you're saying, that, they see these results and they're like, no, it's still bad for you. I had a guy I was sort of helping out, and he was on my podcast, Joshua Rogalski, who reversed his diabetes in a matter of months. And his specialist again was saying, you're going to kill yourself. You're going to do this, you're going to do that. And he asked her, like, have you ever seen anyone reverse their diabetes, type 2 diabetes? And she said, no, I haven't. I said, okay, well then why don't you, then why wouldn't you ask questions and think, okay, well, maybe what he's doing, is something I should look into. And she just dismissed him and said, look, you're gonna have to talk to a dietitian about all that. But this is what we recommend you do. And it was very disheartening, she saw this right in front of her, and she admitted, I've never seen this happen before, but I am not willing to accept that there might be some validity to it. So hopefully that sort of thinking goes away.
Yeah, that's the work we're doing. So let's just keep doing it. I have heard that many times, and there's some movement, but we need to do better.
Yeah, definitely. So on your podcast, it's protecting your nest, and that's an acronym. And so can you go through that, because that's an important part of the overall health that you argue.
Yeah, I going back to keeping things simple. I think that when you're in a clinical setting, you have to have a way to think about the things that will help you help patients. So for example, I believe in motivational interviewing. So if one of the acronyms is DARN, the desire to change, ability to change, reason for change, and need to change. If I have that in my toolkit, I'll know to ask questions when people struggle. Everybody's not going to struggle. I give them if you go to my LinkTree, Dr. Tony Hampton LinkTree, you'll see the handout. I give them the handout, eat this, don't eat that. People do fine. Some people don't do fine. So I have to use motivational interviewing to, see if they're ready to change. But my nutrition and functional medicine training allowed me to think about, well, why do we get sick in the first place? And so the acronym is to help people think about, how do you fix the root causes of disease? The root causes could be some imbalances in, your structures, rather the gut lining, those tight junctions that should be tight. If they're not, you're going to have leaky bowel. Do I have hormonal imbalances that are making me sick? Too much insulin is the hormone we worry about the most, right? Do I have digestive issues? Do I have mitochondrial dysfunction? When I was at Low Carb USA, the last time I spoke there, I talked about the mitochondria. And if you have a dysfunctional mitochondria, you're not going to be healthy. Well, what makes the mitochondria healthy? Well, your diet does, but maybe CoQ10 would be something to consider if a person's in that space. So the nest is really talking about diet, nutrition, The E, exercise. The S's are for less stress, more sleep. Your T's are for how you think. Obviously, how we think matters. Self-limiting thoughts will harm you, etc. Recovering from trauma. And then the rope, because you have to climb up the rope to get to the nest, right? So we need a rope, and the rope is to make sure we have healthy relationships, making sure we avoid organisms and pollutants that can harm us. And then the E's are making sure we protect our emotions and making sure our life experiences serve us. So that way of thinking allows me, particularly when I have a patient who struggles, what else is causing them to struggle? And then when I figured maybe they had trauma, so Advocate Aurora Healthcare, where I work, they have a trauma recovery center. If I don't address their trauma, how in the heck am I going to get them to be keto, low carb, or carnivore? That's not happening. Their focus is, I've been in trauma. I haven't recovered from trauma. Doctor, help me with my trauma. But guess what? Most doctors are not asking about trauma, and most patients are not talking about their trauma, or may not even be aware that that trauma is why they struggle. So that's kind of the nest and rope. And I just felt like it would allow me to not just be a therapeutic carb doctor who helps people restrict carbs. It would also help me to identify why people struggle so that I won't blame them when they're not successful. My job is to help them get to their goal. And that acronym helps me to achieve that goal.
Oh, that's good. And I think that having that approach, that whole experience approach, and because obviously a person is more than the sum of their diseases and problems. Like someone has diabetes, you're treating the diabetes, but no, you're actually treating a person, and that person has diabetes in the wider context of their entire life, and it's very important. I completely agree with that. As doctors, we need to be cognizant of the fact that this is coming with a person, and I mean even just with basic bedside manner. People come to doctors because they're hurt and they're sick and they're scared and they need help, and not recognizing that can make you say or act in a way that may be a bit distressing for them. Someone comes in and has a brain tumor, and they're just sort of like, oh yeah, this is what it is. We're going to chop it out. We're going to do this, that, and the other. And they're just like, you just see these tears welling up in their eyes, because they have, they've their whole life has been rocked. And, unless you're able to address, the person and everything else that's going on in their life, then, the specific issue that you're treating, that's sort of a small part of the problem. And I think you're probably going to cause a lot of problems as well. Yeah, I
agree. And that's our job. Our job is to not rely on them, and they shouldn't have to come to a freaking podcast to identify the reasons why they struggle. I mean, think about how ridiculous that is, that you have to go to a podcast or a YouTube channel to heal. You should be able to go to your health system and heal. And that's why it strikes me as a paradigm that we need to shift.
Yeah, well, I mean that clearly shows there's a problem, doesn't it? Because we should just be part of that whole system of healing, as opposed to people outside of the system going like, okay, this is all going wrong.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's funny. So we met at KetoCon, which was a great experience. I thought that was fantastic. You were on really cool panels, a medical panel, got a bunch of doctors and health professionals up there, talking about all sorts of things. But one of them was about the struggles and difficulties that people go through when they're trying keto. You spoke about sleep as well. Like, why is sleep so important in this whole experience?
Just so it was nice to speak about, why we struggle. In fact, when I go to the Metabolic Symposium this year, I think on August 25th through the 28th, and I really appreciate Doug Reynolds and Pam Devine for the work they're doing with the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners and Low Carb USA. But even at that conference, I'm going to talk a little bit about, when we struggle. So if I have somebody that's carnivore, keto, and they struggle, let's find out why. And what I found is that going back to that nest and rope, that sleep is an issue. So we were talking about on the podcast, Protecting Your Nest, about how important it is to, kind of, think about all the things that you need to be thinking about. And for me, sleep's important. And we talked about I need coffee because I didn't get enough sleep, right? So let's do an experiment. Let's get enough sleep and see if I don't need coffee, because coffee was not good for my digestive system. So what I found, even at University of Chicago, where I currently am practicing in the Chicago area, not at this institution, but here, they've done research. 5 hours of sleep, you become borderline diabetic and metabolically unhealthy. 7 hours of sleep, it reverses. And this all happens within a week.
Wow.
That's crazy. So if you're going to be metabolically healthy, you got to get enough sleep. And your sleep duration does matter. So somewhere between 6 to 8. Now, I know that's difficult depending. Some people are going through moments, whether it's their career or whatever, where they can't get as much sleep. But the goal, when it's possible, is to get enough sleep if you're going to be metabolically healthy. They've done these studies at University of Wisconsin and I think University of California, or I think it was at Stanford. They've done these studies that show your sleep duration matters. And so, and we also know that if you don't get enough sleep, you will make more of the hormone that makes you hungry, which is ghrelin, right? I learned this when I got board certified in obesity medicine. I'm learning about this stuff, right? Oh, well, my satiety hormone, leptin, I'm going to have less leptin that tells me I'm full if I don't get enough sleep. But the most important hormone, ding, 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 is insulin, right? So if I'm not getting enough sleep, all of a sudden I will then be under stress because I'm not getting enough sleep. So we covered the stress part of that S2. And now I'm going to make cortisol because I'm in fight or flight mode because I'm stressed. Well, cortisol is going to then encourage my liver to release a little glucose. So now I have all this extra glucose that I don't need because I didn't get enough sleep, and I'm stressed because of that. And that's going to increase my need for insulin. So I'm going to become hyperinsulinemic, which will then increase my risk for becoming metabolically dysfunctional. So if I have a patient in front of me who's struggling, I want to know, how are you sleeping? Doc, I'm at a plateau, I'm struggling. Well, let's look at your sleep. And just fixing that one thing for some people can really help them to do better. So again, it's about thinking outside of the carnivore box and saying, why is this carnivore struggling? Well, because they're not getting enough sleep. So that's one of the things I think is really important as we think about how we help people.
Yeah. And I think I remember seeing a professor from Berkeley as well, talking about sleep. And he said that people who average less than 6 hours of sleep a night are 6 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's as well. So, it's a major thing, and I talk to people like, oh yeah, no, I'm fine. I can run on 4 hours of sleep. And it's like, yeah, you can, but should you? Probably not.
No, those plaques and tangles that you get from that you see on the scans for people with dementia, you have to, in order to remove that excessive byproducts of just living, mitochondria, being the factories of the mitochondria working, you have to have time to remove that stuff, and you remove that stuff when you're sleeping. So if you're not getting enough sleep, it kind of builds up and unfortunately can increase your risk for dementia, which is definitely something we're familiar with in my own family. We have family members who are suffering from that, and you hate to see people who you love, who were thriving, and they're not themselves because they have succumbed to type 3 diabetes, which is known as dementia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You also talk about, obviously going back to the nest, the thinking aspect. What about our thoughts are so important for diet and overall health?
Yeah. Well, just having self-limiting thinking is gonna make it difficult for people to change. So in fact, I did an entire podcast, I think it was episode number 14, where I didn't have a guest on the Protecting Your Nest podcast. I just sat in front of the mic and just talked about our thinking. And what I've learned is that if I have a person in front of me who's, always focused on, this is why I can't do what you're saying, doctor. I know that the thinking may be off. And so we have things like cognitive behavioral therapy that sometimes my behavioral health professional. So if I can't play therapist, which I think all doctors have to do at some point, then I will make sure that they get some cognitive behavioral therapy to help them understand your current thinking is not allowing you to get to your goals. So let's reframe that thinking so that you will have the belief system that, yes, I can exercise. Yes, I can change my diet in spite of my environment making it very difficult. And I just think that our thoughts you could argue, there's this competition between our diet and our thoughts. You could argue. Some people would say your thoughts are more important. Some people would argue your diet is more important. I think they're equally important because if I can't get people to think about their future and their life, even the thinking of the clinicians, the nephrologists who for some reason can't change their belief systems that are currently not serving them, unless they're just interested in having people on dialysis. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that they're driven by profit to the extent that they would literally choose a person to be on dialysis than to help them heal. But we have to focus on our thinking. And our job as clinicians is to identify self-limiting thinking. And when you hear it, how do I use something like motivational interviewing to help them transition out of that thinking, and or our behavioral health colleagues to help them? So I think that's really important. And again, I think about that when I have a person who's struggling, and it's served me well. I just really thought I could just hand, like Dr. Eric Westman says, page 4. He hands them page 4 and they know what to eat, right? Well, what I find is that even Dr. Eric Westman with Adaptive Life have learned that if I don't have these groups and videos and support for people and challenges, then they will struggle. So we have to understand that why people struggle and how we can support them. And once we get them thinking a certain way, having self-confidence, believing in themselves, then all of a sudden the path to healing becomes a little clearer.
Yeah. And obviously, thoughts become actions as well. And if you're not thinking clearly and saying like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to eat properly, you're not going to actually action it. And so, yeah, absolutely. That's going to be a major thing, is getting people's thinking right. And then relationships as well. This is obviously, we're social creatures, we need to be around people and have our social experience. But what to you in your nest and rope is the relationship side of thing? Why is that such a main focus?
It's, we had COVID and we became socially isolated, particularly our seniors, and they struggle with, the COPD program that I reference, where we help people to, heal from COPD is one, with COPD is a little tougher because it's hard to reverse that one, but you can slow the progression. And when that program was transitioned during COVID to a program where patients couldn't come in, it was the virtual program that gave them a break from their social isolation. A lot of these seniors were living alone, and we've had people cry because they were so happy that we didn't stop the program. So we need to not be isolated. When you think about one of the stories I remember hearing from Dr. Gurpreet Pata, I think he'll be speaking. We actually have a panel that we're going to do with the Metabolic Symposium, myself, Dr. Gurpreet Pata, and Ade Fox, who's been on your show previously, the Black Carnivore. And we're going to talk about, communities of color and what we can do to get this message out to them. But in a previous podcast with Dr. Gurpreet Pata, he talked about how when the military folk come back and they are kind of pointed at in a mean way, why did you do that kind of stuff? They become socially isolated. The ones who are not socially isolated are able to get off their drugs. The ones that remain socially isolated can't get off their drugs. So you can't heal if you don't have relationships, community, support. Rather it's, a relationship where it's a husband, wife, or just a person, a senior who needs a church community to be there for them. So I always listen to my patients and I ask them, so how does your husband feel about the changes you're making? And in the communities of color, a lot of my African American women are even concerned about losing too much weight. You know, they're like, he's not going to like looking at me if I'm thinner, because in that community, being a little thicker is more, preferred. It's just what it is. So I just think that so how do you address that? So I have to, make suggestions. I say, let's start doing those squats that we talked about, and we're going to make sure you have some Serena Williams, thighs, for example, so you'll maintain the things that are valuable to you while achieving metabolic health. So we'll keep him happy, we'll keep you happy, but you have to have these conversations, because if you don't, you'll wonder why are they not motivated? It's because you haven't talked to them about that person in their lives that could either be a barrier or someone that'll kind of walk with them. So we have those conversations. I usually will ask them, once you get on the phone, let's call your husband or let's call your wife and let's let them know what we're about to do, and let's engage them. And it may take it's extra 5 minutes, but it's those types of moments that will allow those relationships to provide support instead of harm.
Nice. Yeah, there's some very sad, obviously, some very, very tragic stories that came out of the isolation around COVID. Suicide rates going up, especially in young children, teenagers, and things like that, which is absolutely just devastating to a family and a community when that happens. And even in the elderly community as well, like you were saying, I remember hearing a story, I believe it was in Canada, and that area of Canada had it was acceptable for euthanasia. That was legal. And they went through a couple quarantines, and there was a 14-day forced isolation, and there was the people in the nursing home, they were forced to stay in their room the whole time. So they just sat there in their room for 14 days. They couldn't see their family, couldn't see their grandkids, had almost no contact with the outside world. They just got meals through the door, like a prison, like a nicer appointed prison, but it was still, they were not free to do what they wanted to do. And when this happened again, they said, oh, no, we're gonna have to do another 14-day lockdown. There was a story about this one lady in particular who just said, I can't go through that again. That was the hardest thing I ever had to do, and I'm not doing it again. And so she actually chose euthanasia instead of being isolated from her family and her world for 2 weeks. And that is just heartbreaking, and maybe people say it's like, well, that's, maybe they say something disparaging against her, but think about how big of a deal that is. That's how much that impacted her. That's how much that hurt her in her life, that she didn't feel her life was worth it if she had to go through that. That was so hard on her that even 2 weeks of that was unbearable. She would rather die. And she did. I mean, which is very, very, very tragic.
Yeah, it's sad. And again, our goal is to not make sure people live forever, but we just want the quality of our lives to be at a high level. And if the quality of my life is not high, as is suggested, because I'm not able to be with my family, what's the point of being here? So we want to cut back on the number of times we have to hear stories like this. We can't save everybody, but we just want to touch as many lives as we can.
Yeah, definitely. And is that in that vein? So and going on to life experiences side of things, what experiences are you talking about there? What's beneficial for people?
It's really kind of funny in a way, because I have so many different types of patients I see. So although I tend to have more patients who are African American, if I have a Latin American family in front of me and we're talking about carb restriction, how do you get a Latin American person who's interested in carb restriction to not eat certain foods that are very culturally appropriate, but may be very starchy? It may be a tortilla. I may have an Indian family and it may be the pita bread. I may have an Italian family and it may be the pasta, right? shout out to Dr. Ben Bokikio again, who goes into restaurants and orders a pasta dish and will say to them, give me that pasta dish, hold the pasta. And it's the weirdest thing to say, but, and then he may throw some broccoli or something under the dish, but he'll say, hold the pasta. So he's been very creative. So what I find is that if having a conversation with an African American about eating greens without cornbread, that's a heavy conversation. How can I eat greens without cornbread, Dr. Hampton? I don't understand what you're saying. That's a life experience that they have had that they feel will be a barrier. So we talk about greens and string beans and baked chicken without barbecue sauce. Would you not have sufficiently dined if you eat that way? And the answer is, of course you would have. We talk about eating they're shocked when they come to me and I, contrast the lion versus the ape and how the lion just eats meat and the ape eats plants. But I said, the lion doesn't use barbecue sauce on his meat. And I don't want you to do it either, right? And so the goal is to create a new life experience for them. So it's okay to learn from our past life experiences, but if they don't serve us, we need to learn from it and then have new life experiences. And that's what this podcast is about. The YouTube is about. It's about giving people new life experiences. And you don't have to experience it all yourself. You learn through the experiences of others, and you take those experiences and then you experiment with them, see if it works for you. And then you model that if it's working for you, for your family. You don't become preachy because you want to save the world because your diabetes has been reversed. What you do is you say, listen, if you ever have questions, I'm here. And what I tell people to do is just in a very subtle way, just talk about how great you feel and how nice it is not to take pills. People will be curious and they will ask questions. Don't go home and give them a PowerPoint presentation. That's not the answer. Meet people where they are. And what I do is I try to create life experiences that serve people. Just like when we were at KetoCon, had a chance to meet you in person, had a chance to meet A-Day Fox and Sean Baker in person. So what that did for me, it gave me a life experience, which then led to us having this conversation. And then it grows from there. So I think we just have to learn from our past and be comfortable with the struggle, because you're going to have struggle, but then be willing to change. So we need our nephrologist to change based on the life experience that a patient just reversed their kidney dysfunction. And let's then change our behavior because we've learned something new. Be curious. So that's kind of where that life experience fits in.
Nice. Yeah, I can see. Obviously, yeah. When you raise in a certain way, and this is something that you enjoy and that you like, it's difficult to take that away. And I was I did a rotation of my sub internship over at Duke University Medical Center. My first sort of exposure to Southern cooking and the barbecue stuff. Hush puppies are good. Those are some of the best damn things I've ever had. They were amazing.
They are.
Yeah, I put on some weight when I was at Duke, because it was crazy hours. I was a medical student, but I would get there at 4:30 in the morning. We'd round at 5. We'd have a meeting at 6. Surgery started at 7. Be there till 9 or 10 at night every single night. 6 days a week, and sometimes a little later. And I get to the weekend, I would sleep for like 16 hours straight, because then I'd go home and I'd have to read up on the surgeries that we're doing the next day. And so it was very, very busy. And so I just ate whatever the hell was there. And so, we go to these places. Those hush puppies are so damn good. And I just get like a double order of these things, and amazing. And so if you didn't have a really good reason to give those up, I think it'd be very difficult to do that. It was actually funny, the director of the program in plastics, he sort of made a comment that he called obesity biscuit toxicity. That's how he referred to it as, and I remember sort of thinking it was a funny way of saying it at the time, but then I'm thinking now it's just actually that's exactly how I think of it now. Is there's a toxicity? You're eating this thing, you're getting a toxic exposure, and it's having this effect on your body. And but yeah, hush puppies, fantastic things. And I wish they weren't what they were, what they are. That would be great. But at the same time, Yeah.
My
Sorry.
wife's from Mississippi. She's from Mississippi,
Yeah.
so I mean, she's a Southern Belle, and yeah, you're
Yeah.
gonna get a whole lot